Joining me now is author and political commentator Shamika Michelle.
Shamika Michelle.
Shamika Michelle. Shamika Michelle.
When God looked at man, he said it's not good for man to be alone. He gave him a woman. He didn't give him a village. He didn't give him the community. He said, be fruitful and multiply to this man and this woman. So it's supposed to be God, husband, wife.
If you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always done.
Hello, 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 and happy Friday. Woo! Welcome to Shaking My Head with Shamika Michelle. I am your host, Shamika Michelle, and thank you for joining me for the last day of this series, What Women Need to Hear from Men. As you know, all week we've heard from men about relationships, feminism, mental health, and fatherhood. But here's the question: what happens when men get tired of fighting? And one of my pet peeves is when I see women say things like, when there's an issue, they are no longer together and they have a child, and they say the man doesn't come around as much, or the man is saying he's not allowed to see the child. And I hear a woman saying, well, he didn't fight hard enough. I just don't understand why a man would have to fight at all to be a part of his child's life if that's what he wants to do. Now, we're going to have a whole show on that another day. That's not what today is about. But I just want to say, what happens when a man is tired of fighting? Because that's where we are. And that's why this conversation matters. That's why this entire week mattered. So today, to wrap us up, we have none other than Kevin Donahue. Kevin is a married father. And as I told you earlier this week, I didn't bring just talking heads on here, people with no experience. I brought men to it who have experience in the things that I'm hoping we can all get to. Traditional family values. Because as we can see, society without it is crumbling. It's failing. And us having this idea that men aren't important is not working. It's not working for anyone. So I want to welcome Kevin Donahue to Shaking My Head with Shamika Michelle. And I just want to say thank you, Kevin, for being here. Here's your opportunity now to pop your collar. Tell us who you are, what you do, and why you have authority to speak on this.
Shamika, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. You know how much I love you. I love this show, and I'm excited to be here. Okay, to pop my collar, I come from Washington, D.C. area originally. That's where I was born and raised. Did a lot of business with the different federal agencies, a lot of CIA, FBI, Secret Service, Homeland Security, White House. I used to sell a forensic investigative search engine back in the early 2000s, all the way through 2010. I was part of some of the biggest investigations in the world, quite frankly. But, you know, I left that behind, and I think this will be relevant here throughout this conversation. I was living in my penthouse condominium there in Arlington, Virginia, working with the who's who in the Washington, D.C. area, in the world. And I found myself bored, lonely, depressed. I was single at the time. And I found myself in a world that wasn't fit for me. I didn't feel like I fit in. And I was a little bit depressed, you know. And I tell people, when you're depressed, go to God. And I prayed, you know, and there I was, successful in quotations, but broken. And so I prayed and I said, Jesus, I don't know you, but I want to know you. Reveal yourself to me. And then something came to me. And it was basically, Kevin, if you could do any 5 things in this world, nothing in the way, what would you do? I said, good question. And so I started writing it out. I said, you know, I'd surf every day. I'd learn to speak Spanish. I'd get closer to my faith. I was raised Catholic, but I want to understand who the man from Nazareth was who changed the world with his words and his actions. I wanted to do mission work with the poorest of the poor. And then the last one, I wanted to immigrate to a foreign country. I wanted to go to a place because I saw so many immigrants coming to America with nothing and making the most of it. Meanwhile, Americans were checking out. Americans were resigned. They were complaining. I'm like, so anyway, I said, what's the one thing I could do all 5 things? And I said, Costa Rica. And I went to work to get rid of every single thing I own. And about a year later, I was living in Costa Rica. I now speak fluent Spanish. My faith became real, not religion. I did mission work with the Hands and Feet Ministry in a place called La Chureca, which was a garbage dump in Managua, Nicaragua, where the poorest of the poor in this hemisphere live. I surfed every day, and I had a radical transformation in my life. In other words, I said, delete on the life I had built and go live an extraordinary life. And after I did that, it changed my life forever. Just a couple more things, and we can get on with the conversation. So I'm in the process of finishing my book. It's called Captivate His Soul. The subtitle is Discovering the One Simple Phrase That Will Make Any Man Yours Forever. Now, why am I writing this book and why is it important? I actually started writing it about a decade ago. And anyone out there who's gone through the process of writing a book understands what a difficult process it is. It's not just having good thoughts. It's actually compiling these thoughts into a way that can be shareable, where people get the point. And so I've been working with a professional editor and writer recently to finally get this book to the finish line. I've also spoken at women's events, very successful women's events. My message, Shamika, is tailored primarily to women 35 and older, because what I discovered over the last, 2-3 decades is that, at 35, something happens. This whole idea of being independent, I don't need a man, I can do it on my own. Well, at 35, women have the car, the career, the status, the money, the house, all of the things that our materialistic world has promised us will make us successful. And they're missing the one thing that they've always wanted. And what's that? A man to take care of them. And at that point, they're not even allowed to say it out loud, in our culture anyway. Right. So one of the things I wanted to do by immigrating to a foreign country was go to a different culture, see what it's like, where masculinity and femininity is alive and thriving, right, and healthy. And so anyway, I left for Costa Rica, lived down there for 2 years, accomplished my goals, came back, and I started my career as an entrepreneur. So I've had a number of different businesses. I'm currently the founder and CEO of a company called Stealth Family, where our goal is to help 1 million parents protect their children, their most important asset, their children and their families. So that's part of it too. Part of the masculine power is being a protector. And so part of our goal in our company is to help protect children. But back to the point, I would speak at these women's conferences and there wouldn't be a dry eye in the room after I got done talking. Women would be like, wow. And I think it was interesting because the message was coming from what I would call an alpha male. A strong man speaking to them in a way that they hadn't been spoken to. In fact, giving them permission to understand what femininity truly is and how to surrender into the feminine, how to be a powerful force for transformation by being a girl, by just being pretty, which is so powerful and so contrary to the society that we live in. And when I say, this is important, when I say alpha male, I'll just ask you, Shamika, in your opinion, what does that mean in our culture when someone says, oh, alpha? Do you know what that means in general?
In general, not what it means to me, but I feel like in general, people think it means a man that is just loud or bossy or rich, has money. It's a bunch of surface things.
Right.
And he is not what a real alpha male is. And before you get back to your point, let me just say, when he says there's not a dry eye in the room, listen, not to let these people in my business. But he had me wiping tears. That's how I knew he had to be here this week. Okay, go ahead.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's you just gave me chills. I know. It's so true. And it's subtle because it hits you so hard. And this is the truth. I think it was Winston Churchill says that the truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is. And of course, Jesus says the truth will set you free. And so I think the tears are tears of freedom and tears of possibility, because it's like, oh, wow, the truth was hiding in my blind spot. But really, it's hiding in plain sight. But our culture has created these blind spots into femininity or masculinity. But yeah, let me round back to the alpha male. Yes, exactly right. Our culture has taught us that alpha means bully, that alpha means a guy who's going to roll right over you, doesn't care about you. But my definition of alpha is Jesus Christ, someone like Gandhi, someone like Martin Luther King Jr., any man who's willing to take a stand for his purpose to the point of giving his life for that stand. That's alpha. And so the next question becomes, I'll ask women this at these events, and I'll say, what happens when two alphas come in the room? They're like, oh, they butt heads. There's instant conflict. I'm like, not true. When Jesus went out to get the disciples, he just said, follow me. And they dropped what they were doing and they followed him. Jesus recognized alpha. Alpha apostles recognized alpha. They said, let's go. Let's go get stuff done. I look for alpha males in the world, other men who will stand side by side with me in purpose and in truth, to lead, to protect, to provide, right? So that's a big distinction. And it's interesting because any man that bows up to me or anyone else, I always feel sorry for them. Like, oh, poor little feller. They're instantly beta. And, as soon as they try to like bow up and try to be tough, and because they have a misconception of what alpha is. But, I think the 80s, a lot of the 80s movies and 90s movies, there was always this bully in school, and that was what everyone considered to be the alpha. It's just not true. Alpha is a true leader, a person who leads his family, takes care of it, and tells the truth at all times.
I love that. Tells the truth at all times.
Right.
Going back to when you said you were successful, but you were depressed, and then talking about women that are 35 and up who may have gone to college, bought a house, has a nice car, great career, but they aren't happy. What do you feel like is that central thing that they were missing, although they had, stuff? And I feel like it's the same answer. What do you feel like it was that you were missing? And I know you said the women were missing that man, but were you missing having a woman in your life?
Yes. And I knew that I wasn't going to find her in Washington, D.C. And I've always wanted a beautiful woman. And you've met my wife. My wife is a smoke show. She's beautiful. She's a professional bikini competitor. She's feminine as feminine could be. She's a total sweetheart. I actually prayed for her. I wrote my wife letters years before I met her. I had a vision board for my wife. People would always tell me, they'd ask me, when are you going to settle down? I'm like, I don't settle down. I settle up, and then, people said, you'll know on your first date. And when I finally got introduced to my wife, it's like she walked off my vision board or out of those love letters I wrote 3, 4, 5 years before ever meeting her. And I knew that she was my wife on our very first date. And in fact, I told my wife on our third date, I said, I'm not dating you, I'm courting you. And my wife had to go home and Google what courting meant. She wasn't even quite sure. She's like, what does this mean? She had never had someone sit down with her and say to her, I'm interested in marrying you, right? That's just not in our culture. And so I showed up like this knight in shining armor for her. But here's what I'll tell you. The conflict I had was that, Washington, D.C. is not a culture of beauty. It's like like women end up not, and this isn't always true, of course. This is a generality, as opposed to going to a place like South Florida or Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's very much a culture of beauty. Texas too. Some of the southern states have a major culture of beauty. D.C. is a culture of, politicians, politics, professionalism, lots of degrees in Washington, D.C. But, the high heels get flat and, the skirts turn into pantsuits. And that just wasn't how I wanted to be, but it wasn't just that. It's like, here's what I believe is the problem with American men today. One of them anyway. There is no more sense of adventure. There's no Wild West. There's no pioneering spirit. Everything's safe. All the roads are paved. The doors are locked with cameras. There's no danger out there. You know, if you go back to when this country was founded, it was all pioneering spirit. It was men who had to protect and men who had to provide, and you had to go out and tame the Wild West. Well, now you can drive from, from DC all the way to Los Angeles, and there'll be a Cracker Barrel on every corner. There'll be a Walmart. Everything's safe and paved and easy, and there's no adventure. And I think this is a critical part for men today, is to have an adventure. So for me, moving to Costa Rica, where I didn't know the language, I didn't know anyone down there, I didn't know the culture, I just said, I'm going on my life adventure. And it turned me into a more powerful man. It gave me this worldly point of view. It gave me the ability to look back on Americans and say, this is different down here. In Costa Rica, there's no 911. The streets aren't paved at all. I mean, it's like you'll be lucky if you go to the grocery store and they have what you're looking for, so it's more of a pioneering spirit. But as far as the women in America at 35, successful, but missing the one thing they've always wanted, I think the difference there is, women have forgotten the power of femininity. And they've forgotten what I call in my book, the feminine surrender. I make this distinction. Masculinity is like a telescope. You look through a telescope, it's clear, it's directional, you know exactly where you're going. That's how men were designed. It's like nothing's gonna get in my way. I'm focused on where I'm going, and that's where I'm gonna go. Well, women in our culture have been taught to be more masculine and to be like telescopes. Problem is, they pick up the telescope, they look through it, it's a kaleidoscope. And it doesn't make any sense. It's confusing as all hell, but it's captivating. The slightest move of the kaleidoscope changes it forever. You can't get it back. It's completely unpredictable, but it's beautiful and captivating. If I were to tell you to look through a kaleidoscope, Shamika, and describe it to me, you'd say, I can't. I see colors and sparkles and shapes, but I can't describe it. That's femininity, and it's beautiful. I can't describe femininity. I can't put it into words, but I know it when I see it. It's more of I know it when I feel it. But here's the important distinction. These are opposite ways of existing in the world and opposite ways of viewing the world. I say the telescope without color is boring. It's not a life worth living. The kaleidoscope without direction is lost. So we've been made perfectly opposite. I mean, we come together with our oppositeness and we become one. And so in order to understand how to actually fully be the kaleidoscope, we have to accept that fact, or accept that theory anyway, that, wow, I just want to be feminine. I want to be this kaleidoscopic woman who's feminine in the world. And I want a man to come in and grab me by the hand and lead me. That's what I want. I want a man to come protect me. And I want a man to come provide for me. And it's okay to say that. That's not a bad thing. Yes, I understand it, that you want to be independent. You want to be on your own. You want to be able to provide for yourself, sort of. And the other thing in my book, I smash the myth of independence. It really doesn't exist. There's no such thing. We are all intertwined. We are all dependent on one another. We need each other. If you want to be independent, you're dead. Go live on a desert island and see what true independence is like. So these people who say, yeah, I want to be independent, okay, you're living a lie. What you really want is dependence. And you want to find people who you can depend on. All of us, right?
Yes.
So it's like we have to be, and just for example, as an example, when you get a cup of coffee in the morning from a Starbucks, let's say, how many people did it take to get you that cup of coffee? Hundreds of thousands from all over the world, from the person who planted the bean, to the person who harvested the bean, to the person who roasted the bean, to the person who made the cups and the lids and the truck drivers and the airplanes, to the person serving it to you, to the person who brewed it. Hundreds of thousands of people to get you that one cup of coffee. When we realize our absolute dependence on one another, we start to find that surrender. Wow. The question now becomes, who can I depend on? Who do I want to be to attract the kind of man who I can depend on? And I tell women in dating scenarios, I was like, there's one question that clears up all the BS that your girlfriends will tell you and that ChatGPT will tell you about the guy. And there's one question that clears up whether he's the right guy for you. And that question is, do I see this man as the father of my children? Even if you don't have children, even if you don't want to have children, that question right there clears up everything because it gets to the heart of the matter. And what's the most important thing in a spouse, in a boyfriend or a husband? Character. Character is all that matters. Everything else is superficial, and when we understand the feminine mind, the question is, all women are walking around with this question. Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? This goes for actual physical safety. This goes for emotional safety. This goes for mental safety. It goes for spiritual safety. And so what a woman should be looking for, a woman who wants to be married, that is, there's nothing wrong with being single. But I think at the heart, the vast majority of women do want to find a man of character that they can marry. And the question is, will he leave me? Will he stay? Am I safe with him? These are very important questions. And I think that, the women judge this through a number of things. And to this day, my wife still asks this question. And it's my job to say, I love you and I'll never leave you. You're safe with me. Over and over and over again till the day that I die. It's my job as a man to make her feel safe so that our relationship thrives, so that she can be this beautiful, captivating, incredible, unexplainable feminine kaleidoscope. And the more she's in that space of femininity, man, the bigger my reward is. It's my job to sit there captivated by her. And it's not just her beauty. You know this, Shamika. My wife has an MBA. My wife is an executive. My wife is a mother. My wife is a bikini competitor. My wife is all of these things. So it's my job to stand there captivated by the kaleidoscope of who she is. And just to expand on that kaleidoscope, Shamika, when I say that, what I mean is the kaleidoscope represents all the different archetypes and personalities and emotions that you have within you. I mean, Shamika, I know sometimes you're the BFF, sometimes you're the hard ass girl, sometimes you're the mama bear, sometimes you're the executive, sometimes you're the speaker, sometimes you're the listener, sometimes you're the sexy vixen, sometimes like all of these things, and the list goes on and on and on into affinity. All of these things comprise you. But for men, we don't have that. Men have two and only two, and two and always two archetypes. And this is an important distinction to understand. Men have one archetype is the knight in shining armor. We want to come in, make you feel safe, rescue you, slay the dragon, have you grab onto the, around our waist. And we want to ride into the sunset and be that hero to you. And that's what you want us to be too. But I explained to women, there's an equal archetype within that telescope. There's only one other one. And if you can imagine a little boy who's about 3 years old, and he's got a Superman cape on, and he's climbed the steps because he wants to fly. He knows this cape can work. It's worked in the cartoons and the movies. And he's on the third step and he wants to jump, but he's scared. Maybe he's fallen. Maybe the cape's a little tattered. And at the base of the stair, instead of a damsel in distress waiting to be rescued, is a mother. And the mother is saying, jump, little Johnny. You're my hero. You're my Superman. And the kid jumps into his mother's arms. So there's two types of surrenders there. One is the damsel in distress who wants to be protected and taken care of. And the other is this caretaker, this mother who encourages this little boy to become the knight in shining armor that he's meant to be. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So do you feel like I have a couple questions from what you said. When it comes to being either the damsel in distress or having to be that mother role that encourages him to jump, do you feel like women have a hard time going between the two or recognizing that it's okay to operate as both at
Yeah.
times?
Well, I think there's a distinction here, and I don't think this distinction even exists because my point is this: those two archetypes live within all men, whether that's your father, your brother, your colleague, your friend. These two exist, and what a skillful woman will understand is who is in front of me right now. Is it someone I need to surrender to seduce, to encourage? Because sometimes I wake up and I'm the baddest mofo that's ever lived, and I'm marching through life. Other times I can't barely get out of bed because I'm like, I'm not
Mhm.
good enough. And so my wife understands how to reach into me, to encourage me, or to seduce me. And when I say seduce, it doesn't mean sexually. It means, yeah, you're my hero. Like last night I played in
Mhm.
a softball game and my wife was there and she's cheering me on. Like that's a beautiful thing. She'll leave me little notes, I'll leave her little notes. But we're committed to having this lifelong romance. Here's what's important in order to have that. And that's polarity. The one thing we seem to forget about in life is the importance of polarity. If you have a battery, there's two different sides.
Mhm.
And what's on those different sides? There's a positive and a negative, right? If
Yes.
those that positive and negative aren't there, there's no charge. The battery's dead. And so this is really important to understand polarity. In masculinity and femininity is the same thing. We have to stand strong in our masculine and then strong, and the women have to stand strong in their feminine. And people sometimes say, oh, men have to be more feminine or women have to be more masculine. I said, no, no. How much of the South Pole is in the North Pole, Shamika?
None.
0%, right? My wife has all those archetypes. None of them are masculine. And people get
Mhm.
confused. Have you ever seen a son at his mother's funeral crying? Yeah.
Yes.
Have you ever seen a father holding his newborn baby with eyes full of tears?
Mhm.
Like these are masculine qualities. They're not feminine qualities. They're absolutely masculine. Sometimes men tear up. Sometimes men
Mhm.
bawl their eyes out. Other times they're tough as nails. So it's like sometimes you have to get in touch with your feminine. I'm like, hell no. There is 0% femininity in Kevin Donahue, and there's 0% masculinity in Jennifer Donahue. So I think this is a really important distinction. So to answer your question, um, the skill here is women understanding who is it that I'm dealing with right now? Is it the broken little
Mhm.
boy who needs encouragement, or is it the knight in shining armor who I need to find a way to surrender to?
Question. Does the when he's presenting as the broken little boy, does he know it?
No.
Because I don't. Yes, okay.
Great question. No, it's a
It's
great question. Yeah, men don't know. We always want to masquerade as the knight in shining armor. We always want to be the tough alpha guy who's going to figure things out. And no, the answer is no. And this is where the kaleidoscope is so important because, coming up with different ways to access the encouragement. Sometimes it might be a note. Sometimes it might be a picture in lingerie. Sometimes it might be all these different things. And so no, men. Here's a really important distinction. Men are a bit dopey when it comes to understanding these emotions and these types of ways of being. The analogy I use is men are like Mack trucks. We're barreling down the highway and we're big and we're strong and we'll roll right over you. We don't know any
Mhm.
better. Now, this isn't to excuse bad behavior or anything like that. What I'm saying is men will just keep going in that direction in most cases. The challenge in our culture is women have been taught to be Mack trucks and they're barreling down
Mhm.
the highway and we're sort of neck and neck, hitting our horns and get out of my way. And the thing that I teach women is in the feminine surrender, what happens is that driver's side door of that Mack truck pops open and you can climb up and sit inside the comfort and safety with the air conditioning and all those little buttons and that little tiny steering wheel. And I tell people, what's more powerful, being the Mack truck or being behind the steering wheel of the Mack truck? My entire premise is that femininity is the most powerful force in the universe. Men will die, give our lives, go to war for femininity. But when it masquerades as masculinity, as it has in our culture, it loses 100% of its power. So, would you rather be the Mack truck or be behind the wheel of the Mack truck? Very important distinction.
Yes. I'd rather be behind the wheel.
Right. And you are.
Yeah.
When you're feminine, right? Yeah.
Yes. I have a question. Something that you said earlier when you were describing your wife, and you said she's a bikini model, and sometimes she's she's a mom, she has her master's. How do you as a man, and y'all were going to get to why men are checking out, but how do you as a man allow her to be all of those things without being insecure? Because you will have a lot of men today say, you let your wife be a bikini model, you're a beta. Or why, this is what they say. So how do you allow her to flourish and be all of the things that she is without insecurity?
Well, I find my security in Christ Jesus, first of all. So anything my wife does is a compliment to me and my marriage and everything else. When I first met my wife, I told her, I said, this is the game I play. It's caterpillar to butterfly. When I said this to her, I said, let me explain this. It means this time next year, I don't want to recognize myself. I don't want to recognize the guy sitting in front of you. And this goes even for right now. This time next year, Shamika, I don't want to recognize the Kevin Donahue who's talking to you right now. What does that mean? It means I have to be up to things. I have to be going places, meeting people, trying things, starting businesses. And so when I met my wife, she wasn't a fitness competitor. I encouraged her to do that. She was going through a rough time, and I find it that one of the fastest ways to find results in your life is through your health and fitness. And she got into a program, and like I said, my wife's a straight A student. She just followed that thing, and she got second place in her first competition. And she just found a new love. It'd be no different if she was doing gymnastics or anything else. It's just a sport, and she loves it. And and she had her MBA by the time I met her. My wife didn't understand this distinction I mentioned earlier about independent. She thought she was going to be an independent woman her whole life. Well, if she was, she'd still be single. And I told her, like, on our first or second date, I said, hey, I'm going to be the boss of you. And she got very mad. And I said it on purpose, to kind of give her a pattern interrupt. And I said, and if you're lucky, you'll be the boss of me too. And that's the way it is. Like, I'm going to court you because I want to be the boss of you. And, I want you to be the boss of me too. But really, I was telling her that I'm going to lead this relationship. You have nothing to fear. And then what the result of that is that she just trusts me with her entire life, and she believes in me no matter what. She's like, man, Kevin, you're just always right. Like, I don't know how many guys' wives say that to them, because I'm always looking out for the truth and looking out for her best interest. So I think that's, partially answers your question from the sense that I don't find insecurity in other people's accomplishments. I find my security in God. You're like in my faith. And then I'm pursuing my own things. We pursue things together. And so we encourage each other all along the way. And it's just it's been a great magic carpet ride.
I love that. So to get to why men are checking out, why do you think is the number one reason that men are checking out today? Like, with what you've just described to us and what we've heard all week from the men that have been up here, they love being married, they love having families, they love leading and being that provider and protector and alpha male. Why do you think we have so many men saying, nope, never mind, I don't want that?
Yeah, I'll give you a few reasons. The first one I would say is the loss of femininity. The fact that femininity in America and Western culture in general has turned into masculinity. And I tell women this: without femininity, there's no need for masculinity. If you got it all figured out, there's no need for men. If you're already safe, you don't need us. And so men are checking out. And what's happened in America in particular, and this goes for other Western cultures as well, is that femininity has become a weapon. And what do I mean by that? I mean specifically OnlyFans, sexuality. Like everything is lead with sexuality. If any of your listeners have traveled the world, and I've traveled significantly, if you go to a place like Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, it's got a very, very rich Muslim population. And there's a lot of women in burqas walking around. And, Dubai or all these countries, there's these burqas, and you don't even understand what the burqa means. And I didn't either until I was sitting at dinner one night and I saw a man sitting across from his wife who was in full burqa, like you could see nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I instantly realized that she was preserving all of her beauty only for him in private. Like she wasn't going around flaunting her stuff. I was like, wow, I really started to understand the purpose of hiding behind these burqas, And in some cultures, like in Dubai, you'll just see the eyes. And you start to realize, oh my gosh, that woman has the most beautiful eyes. And that's all you see, and that's all you get. So I think femininity has been, and let's say sexuality, has been weaponized in America. And it's not, while it's alluring, it's not attractive. Men like subtle femininity. Yes, we love a beautiful woman who makes herself up and has a beautiful shape. Of course, we're attracted to that. But I think one of the things is that OnlyFans and rampant pornography, all of these things where, we carry pornography around with us in our mobile phones everywhere we go. When I was a young man, there was, someone might have a VHS tape they snuck out of someone's house and you could see a porno. Now it's everywhere you go. And I think it's desensitized men. It's killed men's spirits. Even every TV show is almost pornography. That's one of the reasons. Another thing too, Shamika, is, if you take a wild lion and you put him in a zoo and you put this lion in the zoo for 4, 5, 6 years, what happens to that lion?
Yeah, he becomes docile.
Yeah, he becomes docile.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in his docility, he loses that spirit, the spirit of being a lion. If you took that same lion 10 years after being captive in the zoo, put him back in the wild, he can't survive. He'd sit there by the trees waiting for his lion tamer or the zookeeper to give him food. And so he's docile, just sitting there doing nothing, and will die. And I think I mentioned this earlier, that in America, there's no Wild West. There's no pioneering spirit. The goal, one of my goals growing up was get a good job with the government, sit there for 20 years or 30 years and then retire and, watch TV, put yourself in debt and then, stay in debt until you die. Right. That is the same type of thing. So I think America has become like a zoo and men have become tame. And, I think this is what you were mentioning earlier about some of the influencers going at each other and, this type of thing, like cussing each other out. And that becomes their drama. And it becomes like the housewives of whatever, right? Men have become like housewives. They're, talking about politics, which doesn't make a difference. They're talking about things that don't make a difference, but make them feel inflamed and enraged. And that's not real masculinity either. Masculinity is having a vision and pursuing that vision no matter what. And another piece too, Shamika, is that debt. Usury has become normalized in our culture. Everyone's in debt. You get a mortgage, you get a student loan, you get car loans. Neither one of my grandparents were in debt. My one grandfather built every house he ever lived in. The other grandfather rented until he saved up enough where he could buy a house cash. There's something that debt does to masculinity. It makes you a slave. It makes you a slave to whoever you're borrowing from. And I have to remind people, this is a big eye opener in Costa Rica. And I've spent a lot of time in El Salvador, all throughout Latin America. People own their houses down there. They actually own them. In America, I say, do you own your house? Like, yeah. I'm like, how much is your mortgage payment? Okay, well, if you have a mortgage payment, don't pay your rent next month. Guess who's coming for their house? Someone else owns it. You're just borrowing the money, and you end up paying 2 times for the same house. So, those are
Yes.
just a couple factors in America why men are checking out. Another thing I'll just tell you is a cultural phenomenon that I noticed. So I'm old enough to remember uh, real masculine heroes that came out of Hollywood. If you remember Superman, Christopher Reeves, he was
Mhm.
truth, justice, the American way. You had, Little House on the Prairie, Michael Landon. These guys always did the right thing. You had
Mhm.
$6 Million Man. You had A-Team. These guys were not violent. These guys were just doing the right thing at all time. Even the Fonz, if you watched Happy Days, the Fonz was always cool, and the Fonz always did the right thing. That's what I
Mhm.
was raised with. That's how I was taught to be a man. Do the right thing and be a good man. Well, what happened in the 90s? Enter in shows like Married with Children, where Al Bundy was a
Mhm.
slob on the couch whose wife and kids made fun of him. You had
Mhm.
anti-heroes like Forrest Gump, who was basically a
Yeah.
lovable, retarded guy who, just ran whenever there was trouble. And he was, a sissy to Jenai. He just did what Jenai said. And that became, the hero of our times. Also, you have
Mhm.
Homer Simpson, another slob of a father, could never get things right. Kids make fun of him. Enter in
Yeah.
every Will
Adult.
Ferrell character. What's that?
I said adult.
Yeah,
He was,
exactly.
yeah.
Every Will Ferrell character, Anchorman, they're just goofballs, Wedding Crashers, The Hangover. What we've been delivered since the 90s, I'd say, are irresponsible, goofball men. Name me
Mhm.
one character who was a stand-up guy. Like even Bill Cosby. We all looked up to Bill Cosby. Now, even Bill Cosby will rape you. Like every character that we grew up with has been put to shame. This is part
Mhm.
of making men docile on purpose through
Mhm.
propaganda, right? And so this is
Mhm.
another one too. Like, another movie was Dumb and Dumber.
Mhm.
Two goofy guys could not get anything right. In fact, I was leading a mission trip down in Nicaragua one time, and there was two full-grown men, and all they did was snicker and quote Dumb and Dumber. I had to sit them down and shut them up. I said,
Wow.
that's a funny movie, but like all these guys got these one-liners from these movies, and it's not like The Godfather. It's these goofball movies that have dominated our culture. And another thing too, Shamika, and you'll understand this. I grew up with, Lionel Richie, beautiful love songs. Once, twice, three
Yeah.
times a lady. I grew up with Kenny Rogers. I'm your knight in
Mhm.
shining armor, and I love you. Just beautiful love ballads. What happened to that? You
Yeah,
know?
it's gone.
It's gone. I mean, my
Yeah.
first concert with Keith Sweat. I mean, that's the most romantic guy. It was just love ballads, and it was interesting because my wife is about 7 years younger than me, and I would send her these beautiful love songs, and I was like, "Why don't you ever send me any love songs?" She goes, "I don't really know any." She was
Mm.
raised with like Britney Spears, "Oops, I Did It Again," like all these types of things, and that's also has been a major factor in our culture that has feminized or at least taken the masculinity away from men. So I would say some of the stuff you can see, it's in plain sight, but
Right.
the other stuff has been subtle. It's been years and years of taking heroes away. And by the way, this is part of what
Mm.
the Communist Party, so to speak, they want to demoralize culture. How do you do that? Well, you do that by taking their heroes away. There's, John
Mm.
Wayne was a hero, right? And then I think the movie that explains it the best for me was The Sound of Music. Incredible
Mm.
movie. And that kind of goes
Lo
back to the kaleidoscope and telescope. Captain Von Trapp was so telescopic, he had his kids on a whistle, but he was
Yes.
single and lonely and like he was dating the Baroness. But in comes
Mhm.
Maria with song and laughter and dance and love, just pure love. And Captain Von Trapp was captivated by her. He couldn't help but fall in love with her. He was engaged to the Baroness who was wealthy and beautiful and all the things, but he dumped
Mhm.
for this funny woman with a funny haircut because she was such a kaleidoscope of joy and femininity. And I think those are the characters that I was raised with, masculine men who did the right thing. In this past generation, I would say mid Gen X on, have been raised
Mhm.
with Dumb and Dumber, essentially, and Forrest Gump.
Mm.
And these are not the men that you want to be like. And here's what I think is probably most important. I was raised by a masculine father. My father, church every Sunday, you know, suit to work every day, never missed a meal with the family, coached us in basketball and soccer and all the sports. Just a man's man, took care of us. And so I think I was very fortunate in having him as a mentor. My grandfather was a World War II hero, built every house he ever lived in. I knew him until he passed away and when I was about 30. So I think this is the other piece too, is having good men generationally in your life who can teach you how to act, how to treat women, how to treat other men, how to walk through the world in strength and power and truth.
So when I hear you say, they're walking through life with docility, do you feel like it's willingly, or have they just been chipped away little by little, bit by bit, so slowly that they don't even notice that they're here? Or do you take this as, are they protesting silently? Because why do we see that they're giving up? Do they not realize they're giving up? Or do you think they understand that they are, and this is maybe like a silent protest?
Okay, there's
I
a
don't
phrase
know.
I have here, and I want to read this. And you know this when I'll start reading it. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. So I think we're in the mid of that like in the midst of that cycle right now. I do think
Mhm.
it's in most men's blind spots.
Okay.
They are addicted to television, to social media, to video games. I don't have a television in my house. I haven't had one in my house in over 15 years, and I never will ever
Wow.
again because it's all garbage. There's nothing good that comes out of television. Nothing true comes out of the television. So my son is
Mhm.
being raised now in an environment that has no TV. I tell people I'm almost Amish at this point, right? Like we eat very healthy. We don't surrender to the government or the medical system. But we're teaching our son to be a masculine man. We're going to put it right out there for him on how to treat women, treat people. And this is a big deal. It's the most important role in my entire life, is to raise this young man to be a good man and to be a strong man and to understand what it means to be a man. I I tell people to go out and find mentors. Young men, go find mentors, people that you look up to. Even if you want to historically, I took Jesus as a mentor. And when I moved to Costa Rica, I just studied the life of Jesus. Who was this man who changed the world? I kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, forget the religious aspect of Jesus, forget the Son of God.
Mhm.
Who was this man? And I was able to discover for myself as Jesus being sort of a historical mentor. Even Booker T. Washington, up from slavery. Like when you read about these
Mhm.
men who made powerful men out of themselves, it becomes more aware. But to your point, there's a lot of distractions. And so I think it's in most men's blind spots right now. And I think
Mhm.
this next generation is a revolutionary generation. They don't want the materialism the way we were taught to worship it. They don't want the debt. Freedom is more important to them, and truth is more important to them than just going along to get along.
I have a question. You said something about not being a slave to the government,
Yeah.
and this may be irrelevant to the topic, but there are a lot of men who are saying they don't want to be married. What do you say to the person that then says, maybe we can be together, have a commitment to one another without having an actual marriage certificate? Is that possible?
I mean, of course, anything is possible. I mean, it's a legal binding agreement. For me, it's a sacrament. It's a
Mhm.
commitment to my life and a commitment to God. And so I encourage everyone. I tell a woman, if a man's not, first of all, you ask the question, do I see this man as the father of my children? If the answer is no, run and don't ever look back and wait till you meet the man who you see as the father of your children. And then let that man court you and get on a knee and propose to you. I'm an advocate for marriage. I think marriage is an important thing both for a man and a woman. And if you're with the real man, he'll want to lock you down. You know, it took me forever to meet my wife. And as soon as I met her, I said, I got to lock this woman down forever. And it's the greatest joy of my life. And it's not locking down, it's unleashing the power of the possibility of when the kaleidoscope and the telescope create that polarity and make anything as possible. I mean, when man and women come together in commitment, not just for sex, of course we can make babies just from having sex, but when we come together in commitment, we are able to make the miracle of life. It's really the only one of the few miracles that we have, like godlike powers to create life. And so it's easy to do that just by coming together and having sex, but raising that child as a powerful person in this world is a whole nother gift. And, you know, it's like, I always joke with my wife, I'm like, you're lucky you met me, you know, and she laughs. And she goes, you're lucky you met me too. I said, I sure am. And now I tell her, I said, I'm lucky I met you. But yeah, people can, there's all sorts of different ways to do life. But, you know, even at the wedding ceremony, like who walks the bride down the aisle?
The father.
That's right. What does he represent?
The current protector and provider that's giving his daughter to the next protector and provider.
Alpha male is walking his vulnerable and precious flower down the aisle and handing her to the next alpha male for him to take care of this beautiful, precious, wonderful, miraculous woman. Right. And I tell people at that moment, you know, the father kind of looks at the guy, you got this? And the guy's like, I got this. And that's like the alpha male protector passing on to the next alpha male. But I think that's important. You know, the wedding ceremony is important. Getting married is important. But, you know, people do make it work in other ways. But I really think marriage is the commitment of marriage, saying I'm with you forever. And it's a commitment to her and a commitment to God for me, from my point of view.
Okay. So I'm just going to read a few of the comments and let you, you know, maybe if they have a question, you can answer. Earl Grey the Bay says yes, and we can see through that fake alpha performance now, but when we are younger and are unfortunate enough to grow up without a dad, we tend to fall for the performative alpha male. And I totally agree.
Well said. Yeah. I mean, I think we all fall for the performative alpha male at times, you know, because they may have the fancy car or they may have something that we want to have. So this is a very, very important distinction. And yes, without a father, it's that much harder. You know, my father would warn me of the charlatans. You know, he would point out things to me. You know, one of the things my father pointed out was, you know, how they would try to destroy Christianity in Hollywood movies. You know, they'd always make the hooker have a crucifix in her cleavage or something like that. And my dad would point out these little idiosyncrasies to me. I was a paper boy growing up, and my father would point out propaganda. I delivered the Washington Post in the morning and the Potomac News in the afternoon. And he would show me different articles, like why they put this on the front page instead of the back page. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what it's like to be raised without a father, without a mentor like that. But, you know, but then at some point, I'd say 16 for me, I rebelled against them and I had to go find other mentors. Now, you know, I always come back and my dad is now a good friend and I love my father, but having that is important, you know. And I also grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of Marines. There was a general that lived near us, an Army general. So we always had good men. And my father was always there to protect us from anyone who might be pitching some nonsense. That's a great point. It's difficult without a father, for sure.
Yeah, and it's hard when you don't have that father, I say, because you almost don't know what it looks like to have that provider and protector. And so you have to, once you get to a certain age, hopefully you understand the importance of it. But for so many women, they don't even see the importance because they've never had that. There was no example of that. And then when it shows up, they're very combative. You know, you're not my daddy. you're not going to tell me what to do, or they're very combative because they don't understand what it's like to actually be in that safe place. As you said, you're safe with me, mentally, spiritually, physically. They don't know what that's like, and so when it shows up, sometimes it's hard to recognize.
You're right. I'll tell you something. I talk about the feminine surrender, and I always say that it's not just surrender to anyone. You have to surrender to that man, the man of character, right? But I compare the feminine surrender to the surrender to Christ. Like, we don't get Christ until we fully surrender. I trust you with my life. I believe in you no matter what, Christ. You're my God. God made man in his image and then made the woman to support the man, right? So it's important that we understand what that surrender means. I'll tell another quick story. I was giving a talk in Las Vegas to a very successful group of women. And there was a woman, super liberal gal, and the woman who was putting on the event said, that girl is going to give you trouble. She's super left-wing liberal. I'm like, nah. She's like, she's from Berkeley. I said, nah. I said, the cool thing about the truth is it's just the truth. So it doesn't matter. There's no political lines here. And she came up to me before my talk and she started kind of yelling at me. She pulled me aside. She goes, you need to talk to men. Women don't need to hear this. Men need to hear this. And I said, okay, we'll see. I gave my talk, and the next day, I told you there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The next day I came back and she pulled me aside. She goes, hey, I want you to know that I called my husband last night. I'm like, uh-huh. She goes, I told him what you told me to tell him. I said, uh-huh. She goes, he cried. I said, I know. She goes, he's never cried before. I said, I know. And she just grabbed me and hugged me and said, thank you. I basically taught this woman who was being Miss Bossy Pants all the time in every aspect of her life. I taught her how to surrender to her husband. And she transformed her relationship. And, it's not just a one-time thing. It's a forever thing. You don't just surrender to Christ once. You keep on surrendering. And the same thing here. It's like I become a more powerful man the more my wife surrenders to me.
Yes. That's really good. Sharisa Jones said, oh my God, Shamika, he named all of your traits when you were going through the different ways we show up women.
Yeah.
Now you can see why I said he had me in tears, because he just felt like he was reading me like I was an open book.
Well, you have thousands of them. You have thousands, and those are just the ones that appear. There's so many more that I know. Like, this is the thing about femininity. It's literally thousands and thousands of archetypes and traits and emotions and character. You don't even know how you're going to show up that day. That's how powerful the kaleidoscope is.
Yes. And I think for me, I will say that's sometimes the hard part, because sometimes I want to show up a certain way and then something else is there. And I'm like, no, go away. I want to be this day. And that other thing comes up and it overpowers what I'm trying to be. And that's the really hard part for me. Yes. When that little girl shows up, and I don't want that little girl showing up. I want the woman who has everything under control presenting, and I don't know where she is.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Miguel says marriage isn't a fairy tale or what you see on movies or TV, especially when you have kids. It's something you have to work at and has a lot of peaks and valleys. It's hard and easy as our lives are.
Yes. No, and 100%, Miguel. Incredible distinction there. But this is what we get. This is where we get our pride. It's like Booker T. Washington in his book Up From Slavery said, if you're going to wash the floors, be the best floor washer out there and take pride in that. And, do all you can do. And especially when it comes to the lives of our kids, like, we have to do the best we can do. And it's hard work, and I've got a little 3-year-old guy, and, it's joyful right now. But I told my wife, here's what I told my wife: you can raise a boy, I'm raising a man. And she gets it. I'm tough with him, I'm stern with him, and my wife gets to be his place of love and cuddling. And I am too, of course. But in the end, I'm raising a man. Even though he's 3, I'm still raising a man.
Yes, that's really good. I always say that's why God gave me 3 girls, because, mine would have had my man, my boy would have had a broken wrist, I believe. Just, yeah. Thomas Bailey says, I don't think a woman has to be in a beekeeper suit, though, Kev. When you talked, I think about the burgers, the burkas.
Oh, right. No, of course not. No, that's just a cultural phenomenon. It's just interesting. It's like I've been with the Maasai people in Tanzania and the Serengeti. They live in mud huts and the men hunt lions. And like the alpha male is the one who comes back with the lion. And they do these jumping dances. And, that's just a cultural distinction. Of course, not the beekeeper suit. That's so funny. It's just that's what they do in their culture to respect their man, of course. I see even now in the Catholic Mass, more and more women are wearing these veils over their head. And it's just something that's coming back and it's supposed to show modesty. I think my point is, especially when you go to a place like Las Vegas or Miami, it's like, it's just outwardly overly sexual. It's just in your face everywhere you go. And it's just a contrast to the beekeeper suit.
Yes, absolutely. Earl Greta Bay says, when you respect yourself in your marriage, you don't even want it all hanging out. I swear I don't want to be looked at in a sexual way at all, except from my husband.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes. Although sometimes you could be in a button-up, and these men, I don't know, it's like they have X-ray vision or something. I don't know.
Listen, some women cannot hide it. Like, it's just like you can do the best you can to dumb it down and you're still like, Shamika, you can't hide it. That smile alone is going to be attractive. By the way, for the women out there, the most attractive thing to men is a smile. Something goes off. Our endorphins go through the roof when a woman smiles at us. No matter whether you're smiling at the person or for the person, we feel like it's for us. Like my wife's smile melts my heart every single time. Anyone's smile. It's such a beautiful thing.
Yes. Yeah. And she's such a sweetheart. I love her so much. Just very friendly, very kind. Like I see why you fell for her. Gnostic Phoenix says Charles S. Dutton from Rock is a great fatherly character. Yeah, he was a good fatherly character. I don't know if you're familiar with that show. You remember that show?
I remember
Rock?
that show. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, there's always been great characters. It's just that over the last 20 to 30 years, we've seen sort of a downfall of men being the butt of jokes, unable to take care of their families. I just think of Homer Simpson where he's leaving the nuclear power plant with nuclear waste on his back. It's not like Leave It to Beaver or some of these shows in the 50s and 60s where the men were stand-up men, the wives didn't have to work, or Andy Griffith or some of these shows that I grew up with. Like Andy Griffith was the ultimate man, taking care of his family. And, I don't know. There's all kinds of good characters from back in the day, and there's still some today. It's just fewer and far between. I think of the rap era when NWA and some of these groups came out where it was just like overly sexualized, using women, using the terms that just aren't good. And I used to love that music. I listened to it all the time. I loved it. My college days were Snoop Doggy Dogg, right? Like, and then at one moment I realized, I'm like, this stuff is polluting my brain. How could I ever meet a wife? How could I ever be a good man if this is the stuff I'm listening to? I don't know what it was. It was a distinction somewhere around the year 2000 to 2003 where I just said, I am what I intake, whether it's eating or listening or watching. And that's when I stopped listening to that kind of garbage rap music and started listening to more worship music. I got rid of my TV and I got very, very careful about the things that I put into my mind.
Oh, for sure, because faith cometh by hearing. So if all you're hearing is bitches ain't shit, or just all of the trash that we listen to sometimes, if that's all you're hearing, then that's how you're going to think, because faith cometh by hearing. And so I really liked Fantasia when she said she had to stop singing all of those songs that were like men bashing or male bashing, because she wanted to be married. She wanted to be a wife and have a family. And so she wanted to sing more songs about love because that's what she wanted. And so that's the way that I was like, okay, yeah, I have to stop listening to that trash all the time, over and over and over again. Because if you are constantly saying men ain't shit, that's the only type of man that's going to show up,
Exactly.
because that's what you believe. I
And
always feel like it's not seeing is believing. Believing
that's
is seeing.
right.
Yeah.
Couldn't say it better myself. Let me also just say this too, in regards to men checking out. Um, the most masculine thing a man can do is have a vision and pursue that vision. I just mentioned I listened to Snoop Doggy Dogg and all the different rappers and all that stuff. And then, at some point I said I deleted all that and I started writing my bigger future. I have journals upon journals where I future visioned my life, including my wife. I wrote love letters to my wife years before I met her. And when I met her
Mm-hmm.
and we were dating, I handed them to her. I said, "Hey, I wrote these for you. If this isn't you, it's okay. I'll wait. I have faith that I'll meet her." And my wife read this and her heart swelled. She was like, "I'm not only this, I can be more like this." Like I gave her my vision for the woman of my dreams. Now that's a rare
Mm-hmm.
quality. I get that people don't normally do this. It's kind of a strange thing, but we're commanded to do this. Like we're supposed to have a vision.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to no
Yes.
longer conform to the patterns of this world and be transformed by the renewing of our mind. How do we do that? Well, we do that by putting ourselves around the right people, by having a big vision for our lives, and not surrendering to the cultural norms that have destroyed men and women as well.
So we have some funny people in the chat. Kayla Rain says, this week's conversations have been so good that I decided to leave my boyfriend today. I'm
Awesome.
excited for what's ahead.
Kayla, all I got to say is congratulations. I always congratulate people when they quit a job or they start something new. I mean, there's a great phrase that I live by, and it goes like this: destroy anything in your life that isn't excellent. If it's not excellent,
Mm,
don't keep it around. Clean out your closet. That could be a relationship, it could be a friendship, it could be a job, it could be a habit. Anything that's not excellent, don't keep it. And so, what I tell people that end relationships is good for you. Either you'll go find someone that's more extraordinary, or you'll come back together better than ever with making the right changes. So, and I've seen it both ways. There was a point where my wife and I broke up. And it was so hard, but it was the right thing at the time. And we came back together better than ever. So I encourage you, Kayla, what I would say to you is write out a list, 20 must-have characteristics, everything from physical characteristics to character to qualities, and then have 5 hell no qualities, 5 things that you wouldn't tolerate no matter what. And keep those with you and, write them out and then write a love letter, or even I call it remembering the future. Write in your journal or on a piece of paper, September 4th, 2026, and just start writing out as if you're there. Here I am
mm.
in Aruba with my new boyfriend. I can't believe, I think he's going to propose to me today. I'm so excited. I got a new job, blah, blah. Just write it all out as if it's already happening. Like pretend, act like a little girl and pretend, and see what happens. I've done this over and over again. And it doesn't happen within a year. Sometimes it happens sooner. Sometimes it happens later. But boy, oh boy, that's a cool thing to do when you start training your brain for new possibilities by actually writing it out as if it's already happened.
Yes. Stimulated student says, I believe every man needs to have a vision so he can know how his woman works into that and can
Yes.
help him towards it. Women need something to do, not just sit there and be.
Amen. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's great. Some women do have this fantasy of marrying a rich guy and sitting around. And I'm telling you, some of them are the most miserable folks on the planet Earth. My wife and I have been fortunate enough. We lead mission trips down to Nicaragua. We call it Surf and Serve. We invite either church or non-church people down there to basically feed families and build homes. And, that's like a shared mission we have. My wife just took on a new career recently. I'm encouraging her in that. She's encouraging me in all the things that I do. So it's so absolutely, I agree with that 100%.
Well, we have come to the end of this talk, and I'm actually sad about it because there's so many, I think, so much more we could get from this, but I am going to hopefully have you back when Captivate His Soul comes out.
Sure.
and we can actually have a discussion about it even more, and people can get the book.
Yes.
So I will, because I'm going to write my vision out as well. I'll be bigger. When does it come out?
We've got about 3 chapters left, and then we'll go to editing. It'll probably be back out in about 2 months.
Oh, yes. I'll be bigger. We'll have a bigger platform, more people here. We'll push the book, and it's going to be a bestseller. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to get it,
Yeah.
obviously, and you're going to sign it and write me something really nice on the inside. I'm looking forward to that. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us here and letting us know why men are checking out what society would look like if we allow this to keep happening, and how or what we can do as women to stop the bleeding. So I really, really appreciate you for coming on today. This has been an amazing week, and you were part of it. I thank you for saying yes right off the bat. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Shamika. It's my pleasure, and I can't wait to see you again soon.
Thank you. I'm going to let you go. Then I'm going to fuss these people out. I'm just kidding. But I'm going to let you go.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. All right, head shakers. I hope you enjoyed this week. Thomas, Miguel, Jimmy, Kayla, Khalees, Earl Grey, the Bay, all of the people that, B. Thank you all for just coming and hanging out with us this week as we learn what women need to hear from men. I appreciate it. It's been an awesome week. I don't know what we're going to do next week, but it's going to be something really, really good. And I hope to see you all back. At the end of next week, we are going to have Lotus Flower. Lotus Flower is going to come on next Friday, and she is going to tell us why it's all white people's fault. I'm just saying, I don't know. If you were here when we did Safe Spaces, you know that she said we were surface and we needed to go deeper. She accepted my invitation to come on next Friday to explain. It's going to be an absolutely great conversation. I'm actually looking forward to it. So make sure y'all are here, not just Friday though, all week, to see what's going on, to see what else is going to cause us to shake, or cause me to shake my head. I love y'all, head shakers. Have a very great, relaxing, restful, happy weekend. Come back next week. Don't leave me hanging.